Mr. President and Secretary General, let's talk about hypocrisy, and let's talk about state lies in this issue of fighting terrorism, generally speaking, and in the Sahel specifically. Perhaps you don't ignore what I'm about to say, but let me lay out my arguments. First, in the Sahel, we have some 10,000 soldiers, armed soldiers, that are foreign soldiers. Most of them are French soldiers, but there are also American soldiers, Germans, Italian, etc. They have weapons. They have flying equipment. They have surveillance equipment, which is the most sophisticated in the world. And yet, they don't see the hundreds of terrorists that are moving around in order to serve death and desolation, often with unimaginable weapons at their side. In Mali, in Niger, in Burkina Faso, there is no factory to manufacture weapons nor munitions. So, who is recruiting these terrorists? Who is training them? Who is providing them with weapons? Who feeds them, and with what means? Do you believe in this philanthropy on behalf of whom the Westerners have sent their armies to the Sahel to die for our beautiful blue eyes? Well, if you believe that, then what justifies the diplomatic irritation and other gesticulation of France when we told them to skedaddle with their armies? The real reason is really about the resources that are underground in the Sahel. But let me clarify here that no African people is opposed to the French people. There's no anti-French sentiment in Africa, nor is there any issue with our legendary hospitality and our love of our neighbors. Rather, the African people refuse the condescendence, the arrogance, the insolence, the sufficiency, the paternal attitude, the looting of our resources, and organized crime. That's our problem. Indeed, for your memory, Mr. Emmanuel Macron, first, let me remind you here that through the BBC in England on the 14th of June, 1940, an appeal was launched by your own grandfather, General de Gaulle, to Africa to come and save France from the grip of the Nazis. Let me remind you, 17,000 Malians died during the two world wars. This is a blood debt that France has hidden. And if we look at the book of Bakary Kamian, the professor of the University of Sorbonne in France, says, and in that same document, in page 345, there's a table that looks at the war and the loss of lives in the two wars. People from Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, over 82,000 fallen soldiers from those countries in those wars, and over 154,000 soldiers. And this is from a French source, a book by Henri Léger, Report on the End of the AOF Mission, from 1950 it was published. And this is in the archives of Senegal. Please see Annex 5. Now, moving on to the next argument. The 17th November 1986, François Mitterrand, the French president at the time, in response to Captain Sankara said, and I quote, "Africa was looted, and here I'm talking about raw materials. I should have talked about people. For centuries, we exploited you at a human level. We stole your men, your women, your children. We used you. I understand your refusal. I understand your revolt, and I approve of your fight. You are right to refuse to be a sacrifice continent. The time has come for you to develop your own economies based on your own goods and people. And the duty of these countries who abusively used you and used African labor, their duty is to restore to Africa what was taken from them over the last few centuries." End of quote. Indeed, Africa was always openly looted and pillaged, but still there is a great deal of wealth in our continent, of people and mineral resources. Africa is the only continent in the world where the people sing and dance and applaud those who impoverish them, who starve them, and who torture them. The misfortune of Africa is to have met France. End of quote.